here. See, this Hangout is live. Sweet. It should tweet out a link too if you want to tweet that out. If not, that is also totally cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Crazy. Weird.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out how I initially kind of like heard about you guys. I think so. I've been in Portland for like the last 2 years ish. And I was just really interested in like the intersection of people in the outdoor space linking business with sustainability and like the kind of the struggles that you go through trying to continue to be a business owner in that space, and you know, all of the stuff that comes along with that. So could you kind of just speak a little bit about either your background or the background of Niche, or is it Niche or Niche?
Well, it depends on where in the world you are. In the US, it's Niche. Everywhere else, it's Niche, which I always have to remember when I go other places. Otherwise, people are like, what? I'm like, never mind, don't worry about it. It's Niche. Yeah, so my background personally is in graphic design, but I've been a really passionate snowboarder for I don't know how many years now, a long time. And I'm super passionate about the environment and try to do everything I can to lessen my impacts on the world. And so we started in 2009, and at the time that we started, because my partner and I were both some other people who were like helped us out a ton when we started out. Like when we started, there wasn't really anyone who was focusing on the environmental impact that snowboard manufacturing has on the planet, because snowboard manufacturing is actually crazy toxic. Ski and snowboard manufacturing, I should say. And we just thought that was really silly for a sport based entirely on the environment, that no one was putting efforts into this. I mean, there was like companies who'd be doing like one thing within their lineup, maybe like one product, one little, like an FSC certified wood core, which means it's basically like sustainably harvested and stuff. And we were just like, well, that's silly. There's got to be an alternative. So we're like, well, okay, so we're not just going to start another snowboard company, because there's plenty of those out there. And like, if you want to be involved in something that you love, I think you should be bringing something new to the table or something different.
Agreed.
Otherwise, it's like it's really hard to expect to survive in a sea of other things that are already super well established. Yeah, so we started exploring just all sorts of alternative materials. We spent like our whole first year like just testing different materials. Some things worked, some did not work at all. And then we got really fortunate, and we just happened upon a combination of things that worked really well together and actually made them like lighter. They were more durable, and they were significantly less toxic. So that's pretty great. So yeah, awesome. It's been a crazy, 6.5 years or so now?
It's weird to think of 2009 as being that far away already.
Right? It's so weird. Do you find that like as you get older, the years go by faster and faster?
Oh yeah, totally. And especially like as I kind of get more into the meat of like what I really enjoy doing in life and kind of helping people, and you know, just spending more time doing what I really enjoy, then it really flies by, because it's like, wow, I just spent the last month doing all this stuff and it just flew. I don't even really remember most of it.
Yeah, right. It's crazy. Like when you're occupied, time flies. And then also I think as you get older, like your relative perception and experience of time changes, which shouldn't be that surprising, but I try to remember that as much as I can on the daily. Be here, just ready, you're gonna blink and you'll be 60, and I feel like that's probably really true.
Yeah, definitely. And it's even crazier like when you kind of get into more of the flow of things, especially with sports like snowboarding, then time really gets really, really weird.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it's like you get so focused on the seasons, and then it's like winter is like no time at all anymore. It's strange.
Yeah, and it's nuts. Like, just I was looking up some of the content that you've put out with Niche, and like, oh man, it just makes me want winter so badly, because we're right at the base of canyons here in Park City, and so it's like just waiting for the lifts to go up, because we can literally board right back to our front door, and I cannot wait.
Ooh, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how did you kind of make the switch from being a graphic designer to a business owner, and what did that kind of look like? Because I think one of the reasons why I was so attracted to the products that you make is the design aesthetic. Because I think there's a lot of companies that are still stuck in that old school style of like kind of more hardcore graphics, but in a way that's very in your face. And I think your stuff with Niche has that subtlety that has a very kind of a lighter hand to it that makes it really cool.
Well, thanks. That's really kind. I really appreciate that. I try to be different. And I fully agree with you. And it's really interesting even to see like how many different brands have started to take notice. Like at SIA this year, I noticed a lot of creative heads of other companies were like looking our stuff over really thoroughly and taking catalogs, and I was like, this is amazing, but also really strange.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I should be nervous or feel protective or just be stoked, but I'm just stoked. I'm just thrilled. But yeah, so I certainly didn't plan on or seek out to be a business owner or to have my own business. It was like a really just serendipitous series of events. My partner and I, we have one silent investor who's been involved since day one, and we were actually, I've been working for him since I graduated college, and it was just like, so he had a nephew who was making snowboards out of his basement who had gone to him looking for, and he was like, I don't know, I wasn't really interested, and so then my current partner and I, and the nephew was involved for the first couple years that we started up, but my current partner and I, we were like, well, hey, if you're interested in snowboards, like we love snowboarding, and so we were like, hey, would you like let us maybe pitch you some ideas? He's like, yeah, sure. So we then wrote the business plan for what Niche is today, and about like being the only, again at the time, like the only 100% environmentally focused brand. Because that was our like whole MO from day one. It still is. And he was like, okay, cool, I'm into it, go for it. So we got honestly super lucky, like just a very strange series of events. And I mean, honestly, even like when we started, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna tell anyone yet. I wanna make sure it's like cool, because I really don't want to embarrass myself in this space that I like live and breathe on the daily. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's how that came to be. It was really random.
That's really cool. Yeah. And I think in talking with a lot of different people that end up getting into these very kind of focused aspects of an overall market, I think most of them don't really ever anticipate getting into it. They kind of have something like you said with a serendipitous type of experience where all of a sudden they're kind of thrust into this position. It's like, well, I guess it's time to do this now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really weird.
Have you always been located in Salt Lake, or did you kind of move around before ending up, in one spot?
I'm from Southern California originally, actually. And then when I was 16, I moved, like right before I turned 17, I moved up to Sun Valley, Idaho to go move in with my mom. And then I was there for what would have been my senior year of high school. And it was actually like a really strange series of events. I actually, before that, so like when I was 16, I was sent to an inpatient treatment center in Utah for an eating disorder year. And then after that, I moved in with my mom. And I sort of panicked at that time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm missing my junior year of high school. I don't want to be held back. So I was like, well, I'm going to get my GED because I need something to happen. Otherwise I'll have no future. So I did that. And then when I moved to Sun Valley, I didn't know anyone. And I was like, okay, well, maybe if I like go to school again, I can meet some people. And I found out that I was like, what would it take for me to like actually have an actual high school diploma? And I found out that I only needed one more credit that I was missing. Which was really fortunate. So I went and I took two classes at the high school, one math class because I'm terrible at math and thought and then took one other class, and then I got out at noon every day. and would just go straight up to the mountain, because that's when I first learned to snowboard and started snowboarding, because I always thought it was like the coolest thing ever, and I was like, oh my god, I can finally snowboard for the first time. This is gonna be so cool. So I snowboarded literally every single day, and it like changed, like relapsed really badly before like the couple months leading up to that. And so after that, I was like, well, I want my life to be centered around this, because this is the fucking greatest thing that exists on the planet. And yeah, so then when I was going to go to college, I looked around and I looked at a bunch of different schools, and because I wanted to be in a place where I could go to class and still snowboard every day. I thought Denver was that place. Turns out it's totally not, as I'm sure you know.
Yep.
So I like visited a school there and was like, no, I'm not going to drive 4 hours to go to the mountain every day. That's silly. So that's why I decided to move to Salt Lake, because you can go to class and still snowboard every day if you set your schedule up right.
Yeah, that's totally the way to go. So how did design kind of come into the grand scheme of things within all of that other stuff going on?
So when I was in Sun Valley, I think because I was really removed from people, like, so when I was little, I thought like I always wanted to be an artist when I was really little, but my mom is an artist, and from a very early age, she told me to never ever become an artist, because it would lead to a lifetime of rejection and misery, and you would never make any money, and it was just terrible. And so I like never really explored that. And but then when I was in Sun Valley, I was like, again, just really removed, I think, from anything that I'd ever known. And I was like, had just been through this crazy experience of like removing everything from my life. And so I had a lot of time to think, and I was like, okay, well, what at a very basic level? So I was like, well, I need to do something. I want to go to college. What should I do? And I was like, okay, well, at a really basic level, what made me happy as a kid? And I really love coloring books. I always have. And I think it's really funny now that they're popular, because literally, like, for the last several years, especially traveling, I'll be like in airports or on a plane with like stupid coloring books, because until now there were only like little kid ones, and like people like that were close in age, like, are you coloring in a coloring book? I'm like, yes. I just like, okay, don't judge me. Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, I really like coloring and coloring books. That's something I thoroughly enjoy. And then I started, like, I hopped on the internet and I was like, well, who gets to like choose colors for like album artwork, or like who makes album artwork? And then I found out what a graphic designer was, and I was like, well, that's cool. That seems really interesting. I think maybe that's something I could be good at. And I got lucky that I picked something that I ended up really liking and took to pretty naturally, I think, in school. My first major was, so like when I was also in Sun Valley, I started at like in the evenings, I would take some college courses too, just to like knock some of that stuff out. And my first major was psychology. And then I decided I probably shouldn't focus my life around problems. And then, yeah, so that's when I started looking at, okay, well, what are these other things I could be interested in? And decided graphic design was a thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's funny, because I think I tell people a lot that I probably would have chosen psychology at some point too if I wouldn't have found design, because it just has to do with like critical thinking and trying to help people. But I think in a similar way to you, it was like, I don't know if I can deal with other people's problems and like not take it too much to heart. I would probably just have a total breakdown and freak out.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I do think that there's a really large percentage of people that get into that field that are really trying to understand themselves better more than anything. Like, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so in regards to like the design side of things and kind of snowboarding as a whole, it seems like that's been, I mean, in the totality of your life, it's been kind of more recently that all of that is developed pretty quickly. And I think that's cool, because there's a lot of people that you hear in the media that always kind of say, well, I always had this natural talent and I knew I was going to do this from age, 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, however crazy young it was. So I think it's awesome that, that kind of the two things that have developed most in your life have happened within the last, like shorter portion of the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Thanks. That's actually really relieving to hear, because sometimes I get like really panicked about it and I'm like, oh God, I could be so much further along, or what if I
Yeah.
had like actually pursued this when I was younger. But thank you. That's really
Yeah.
nice.
So how do you kind of keep going? Like, was there, I mean, obviously there was some periods where, you were a little bit scared of what was going on. And I think that happens in everybody's life, but what makes you better is being able to just go through that and say, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it regardless of what ends up happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think my dad gave me one really good piece of advice a long time ago that was like, and it was when I went off to school, that it's like, life is really a series of choices. You make one choice and you go, and then you move to the next step, and then at that step you have to make another decision and another one, and like it's just a matter of a series of choices. And if you think the other way, and I've always been a very like driven and committed person, like if I get into something, I'll like really get into it and have like hyper focus, and like I want to be the best at it, and I'll just like go down that path until I've beaten it to death. Or if I feel, I also, though, like if it's like at the same coin, if I like don't think I'm going to be good at something, I'm just like, oh, I'm not interested. So so it goes both ways.
Yeah, I think I kind of live my life in the same way, where I really like to take things to the end of the path, and like you
Mm-hmm.
said, beat it to death. So, like, okay, I tried that, and not only did I try it, but I tried it as hard as I possibly could, to the point where I knew that it wasn't working, and now I can go devote my energy to something else, so that I'm not, I don't have any regret. I'm not thinking what happens if I would have stuck with this a little bit longer, or something along those lines.
Totally. Yeah. And I think just being a passionate, driven person, like that's what you have to do. Like it would be too painful to not see it through. And there's actually like, I used to be a real that still to this day bothers me, because I quit because I was sent off to treatment and couldn't play anymore. And just like have that chapter close. I like I had planned on like playing in college and like seeing that through. And then that's just one thing that's really painful, and I don't want to relive that again.
Yeah, yeah. So like in regards to the kind of sustainability side of things, did you always kind of have that with you, or was there a point in snowboarding or design where you started to pick up on some of those concepts a little bit more and really start to integrate them into what you were doing with your own life?
I started getting passionate about sustainability when I was living in Sun Valley, actually, like having a ton of time on my hands. I think I just started, because coming from Southern California, that's not like, at least, growing up in the 90s in Southern California, I mean, you get preached a lot of sustainability about like water usage,
Hmm.
but at least I don't remember like having that at the forefront of my life or education. And so then when I was in Sun Valley, I just started learning and so much stuff had on the environment, and started to get pretty fired up about it. So just since then, really, so since I was about like 17, I would say, I just got really into it and was like, what? There's all these things that we're doing daily that have such a crazy impact. Like, why are we doing this? Monsanto, what in the world? Yeah.
It's funny because I mean, I was looking at a couple of the Monsanto pages maybe like a year ago when they had just gone online on Instagram. And I have no idea how the poor social media person runs those pages, because it's literally just comment after comment after comment, just them getting reamed a new asshole. And like, yeah,
Oof.
I have no idea how they're able to kind of like justify their social presence online when it doesn't seem like they have too many supporters on their side. It's it's a lot more in the other direction.
Yeah, that's really funny that they even have that, because it's like, okay, who's going to go like a Monsanto page? Because it's either you really hate them, or you're not going to be interested enough to be like, oh, what's Monsanto doing today?
Yeah, it's always super interesting to me how companies like that, or just companies in general, kind of go about creating their social pages and what they're posting online, when especially when they're in more of like a B2B market, and like not they don't really need to put out content for any reason. And it's just like, what are your goals here? What are you trying to do? And it, like, clearly in their case, it backfired. They were trying to use it as a way to boost their image a little bit. And it ended up just being a poster board for, you know, all these terrible comments. But
that's hilarious. Well, maybe they shouldn't be doing half the things they're already doing. Karma's a bitch.
If you ever need a good laugh, I would highly suggest checking out some of the comments on their page.
That's awesome. I will. I also really like reading 1-star reviews of national parks. Recently came across them. They're hilarious. You should really give it a look.
Yeah, like people that shouldn't have been out there in the first place, and you know, are like ragging on it.
Yeah, like I read one about the petrified forest in Arizona, and someone said something along the lines of like, I don't even know, like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. There's not even a forest here. It's just a bunch of dead trees. I was like, what do you think a petrified forest is? Good Lord. It was so funny. They're pretty great.
Yeah. How did you kind of get into the systems that are used with creating the sustainable boards, or at least the eco-conscious portions of the boards that you have now? And like, what was that step like in being a business owner, kind of coming from I like snowboarding to like, okay, now I'm actually involved in making a product? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that especially in the design world, they kind of start out in like, oh, I'm going to make my own t-shirt line, or I'm going to start this clothing thing. And then they end up getting their ass kicked right off the bat. And that's kind of like where a lot of the group gets left behind, is like the people that don't take the next step and like, okay, now I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah. So I probably would have made those exact same mistakes had it not been a close friend of mine. And even just so being in Salt Lake or Utah in general, I think, as you know, is really lucky because it's like a massive hub for this industry. So and I mean, having been someone who like was involved in the community leading up to the starting of Niche, I made a lot of friends because it's just the people I surrounded myself with. And so we were not afraid to go like ask our peers questions. And had it not been for a friend of mine, Ryan Turley, who's now like the global sales manager of Arbor, which is crazy. Go Ryan. He's awesome, but he helped us a ton when we were starting out. So I was like, hey, can I like hire you as a consultant or something? You know way more than I do, and you've been involved in the industry for a long time. And he gave us the advice to like take your time and wait before you release anything. He's like, honestly, I would wait a year before you even release any products. And so we did, and it was the best decision we could have made, because I think we would have made those early mistakes of just like putting something when the number of anyone starting a business, like wait until you have something polished and put together. Otherwise it's like really hard to recapture that first impression from people. And it just looks more impressive, I guess, when you have a full put together package at first. But and then as far as like getting into making snowboards, I mean, as I've come to learn, because I manage our production stuff now, I don't have a background in mechanical engineering or anything of the sort, but I've just come to realize, like, with anything, I think especially like running a small business, you wear so many hats. Like most things, like you can learn, like you don't have to have a specialized education to learn it. You can just get out and learn. Like you don't have to have some special knowledge to learn how to make snowboards. You can just learn how to make snowboards. And the same goes for so many things. And I think even like there's so many people I talk to now that are like, oh yeah, I feel like, God, like my schooling was a waste because I learned so much more when I was actually on a job working that like I would never learn in school. And I think it's true. And that's not to say that degrees aren't useful, because they 100% are. I mean, every degree is not for everyone. And that's, I mean, it's just an interesting time for all that stuff, that like you can learn so much on your own outside of the traditional education system, which is amazing because there's so much information available to you. But yeah, you just sort of have to like, just do it, learn and do things.
Yeah, totally. So was there any kind of like real hiccups when you had first started? Because I think there's like, you know, there's that idea that you really have to take your time and make sure that you're putting out a product that's really good, and that you've thought through in a lot of different ways, and you make sure it's quality. But I think there's also a point where you have to really understand that you just need to put it out instead of trying to make it perfect, and then, you know, getting crippled by this trying to make it better and better and better, and then not ever actually putting it out into the world and taking the criticism and then, you know, coming back at it.
Yeah, totally. Well, we got lucky because so we pressed all of our like first prototypes, but from there, like, there's just no way. Like, it's very, very hard to be unless you have like a full blown production facility, like making boards out of a warehouse by yourself. And like, once you get to a certain size, it's like impossible to be a viable business that way. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's really difficult. I guess it depends on what your business model is, of course. But so we got very fortunate, and we ended up teaming up with GST in Austria, who had an excellent reputation, and we were with them from day one, and they've been around for 20 years. So yeah, we got fortunate to just be with a really good manufacturer from basically day one of actually releasing product to the public. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we had actually on one of the kind of like short tours that we were doing to help promote one of the hat companies that I was working for a bit, we met a couple guys out of the Bozeman area in Montana that were trying to create their own boards, and I think they were doing it from way more of a ground level. They were kind of making it out of their garage, and they had gotten a setup in order to press their stuff. But I think it was like is there like a difference between a cold press and a hot press or something like that, where it took them longer to press a board?
I don't know. Maybe there's like, you have like sandwich pressing, or you could do like vacuum sealing, which I've never done. So I don't really know fully the ins and outs of that, but I would assume that's more in line. I'm not sure.
Gotcha. Either way, yeah, they had like created a couple boards and like went out to ride them, and they were super stoked on it. And like, it was their first couple prototypes that they had made, and they got on them and were just like, wow, these are fucking terrible. We have so much further to go. What was it like on your end, kind of like getting your first couple samples in and then being able to take them out and actually get on them for the first time?
That was really exciting. Like the ones that came from the factory, because they were so much better, and we were like, oh, what are we doing? But like, I mean, I think we were just so excited about all of it. They weren't terrible, actually. Like, they were pretty solid. We still have some of them, and like, I mean, comparatively now, yes, like prototypes, they weren't bad. And I think it's because we had a good press. That makes a huge difference if you have a good press. But yeah, like getting the first ones back from the factory is like the most exciting thing, because it's like all this work that you've put in, and then you have like this tangible thing. And I remember being really nervous. I was like, because that was actually like the first one I tried was flat camber, and I hadn't ridden something flat camber before. It was still like sort of newer at the time, or like wasn't super popular necessarily, at least not compared to now. And I was like, oh God, I really hope I like this, and I hope I don't hate this. And I was like, the first lap I remember being like, I might love this, I'm not sure. And then by the second lap, I was like, oh, this is sweet, I'm stoked. And it was like such a relief. It's like, oh, thank God.
What was it like trying to, I mean, even still trying to maintain that level of play and like fun in the business and in life, while also taking the business seriously, and like that interplay? Because I think there's a lot of people that have a very difficult time being able to step away from what they're doing, but it's also kind of necessary, otherwise to drive yourself insane.
Yeah, that's a really, that's a really important thing, and I'm not always the best at it, but then sometimes I'm really good at it. These days I've become better at it, but I mean, like last year was really stressful, and I was god awful at finding that. But I think it is like one of the most important things that you have to do is like, it's easy to get so worked up about everything that's happening, because there's like deadlines, and you don't have other people to rely on because it's a small team, and like shit gets crazy, and you're going to trade shows and doing stuff, and then like planning like 2 years in advance while you're maintaining the current situation, and it can just be really overwhelming. And I think it's unhealthy to get like, you have to take time for yourself and like breathe. So I think like I do a lot of traveling, which I love, and I most like 90% of the time I combine work travel with fun travel. Like I went to Japan, for example, this February, which was amazing. And so I did like part of the trip was going to this trade show out there and meeting a lot of shop people and stuff. But then, you know, the other half of that trip was just wandering around Japan and snowboarding and enjoying lots of ramen and seeing cool art and all sorts of awesome stuff. And yeah, so I think like you just have to, you truly do have to find a balance, because it's like if you get too burnt out, it's just not productive. And I think even like it's important to keep tabs on like your employees and the people working for you, because they're not going to be as efficient if they're really burnt out. And like when you can come back feeling refreshed, you're way more motivated and you get way more done, and the quality of your work is generally better, which is like, it's cool to see so many companies today that like give that kind of a mindset to their employees. I think it's really, really valuable, because it just creates a better environment for everyone. It's like you really do have to take time for yourself and like balance, and not just work all day every day because you think that it makes you better, or that you're running your business the best you can, because it's not. That's not good for anyone.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people. I'm not sure if you've heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. He's kind of like more of one of the like progressive, I guess, entrepreneurs that is kind of putting out content lately. And I think what's difficult with that is, and what he's kind of talked about a couple of times, is like understanding that sometimes you're not necessarily cut out to be the number one person in a business, and that it's okay to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 onward. But that finding that area of balance in like the responsibilities that you can take on and kind of how much you're able to deal with is really important, because there's like this weird notion nowadays that like you kind of need to be sort of entrepreneurial minded, which isn't necessarily always the case for everyone, but that even in doing that you have to be number one, that you have to be the person in charge, and that you have to be able to take charge of all these situations. And I think there's, based on your personality type and what you're able to handle, that's not necessarily always the case. What has it been like for you to kind of be thrust into a position of leadership and kind of have to adapt to a different style of thinking? Because I think there's like, I was talking to one of our other guests about this a little bit. There's a very different way of going about thinking about design, where it's a lot more personal and kind of like going into your own head and connecting with this other thing. And then leadership is very interpersonal, and it's just a totally different way of behaving and handling yourself and thinking.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Yeah, I think, and I have a hard time to sometimes like I have to like tell everyone, I'm like, no one talk to me. I need to like get in my zone and listen to music. And I'm like, my office has no walls, so I'm like very out in the open. And I'm like, guys, I'm going into graphics mode. If you talk to me, I won't even hear you. So deal with stuff by yourselves. But other than that, and then too, so yeah, then you have to like be a leader sometimes too, and delegate tasks, which I used to be really bad at. And that's a skill that I've had to learn, is delegating tasks, because I've not always been good at like trusting other people to get things done, which, like you were just saying, isn't always healthy or good for your business. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to like, and if you're a wise person, I think you should know what you don't know and accept that, and bring people around you that are smarter than you in whatever areas you need help with. Or just in general, it's good to always have people around you that you can learn from. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and I've always been the type of person that's like a natural leader. Like I like that kind of a role, but it is important to know when to step back, certainly. And yeah, that it is sometimes hard to blend like the creative space with like business space. And then like I just started working on graphics again in the last like month. And when I did, I realized I was like, oh my God, I haven't worked on anything creative for like, I haven't done any actual design work for like 3 months. It feels really nice to actually be doing something, doing what I actually studied. So yeah, it's interesting.
Awesome. Yeah, it's crazy. I think there's also a lot of times in business where you end up learning things or having to kind of rely on yourself or other people and go through some stuff that you might not necessarily have had to confront in any other situation in life. Has there kind of been anything in the story of Niche that has kind of blindsided you or showed up and you've had to learn from in order to keep going?
Oh, so many things. So many things. Yeah, I mean, man, last year, our factory that we started with, GST, they closed their doors after being in business for 20 years. And that was partially what made that year so difficult, because like we had never like had to move anywhere else, and then going to like our production is so specific and it is different and we use different materials. So finding someone that is a good factory and B can actually make our snowboards the way we want to make them, like the choices are few and far between. So that was sort of a nightmare. And then also I think another thing that I've struggled with, I really don't like confrontation at all. And I mean, I handle it well at the time, but it's really, that's been something that's has probably been the most painful and difficult to learn, is like, you know, especially if you have to like let someone go or, you know, tell someone that they've done something wrong, or just like interpersonal conflicts are difficult, or dealing with, you know, if there are problems with production, then a factory about these issues or things like that are really difficult, but I think have led to immense personal growth on like a daily, like if it's sent about coffee, I'm like, okay, well, what are the real issues here? Like, let's just take a step back. And that's been really good. But or even just managing stress, like that alone, because I had a major personal breakdown in December where I was like, oh my God, samples might not come on time, things are crazy, and there's just so much going on, and people all around me are freaking out and yelling at me every day because their jobs depend on it too. And it's like, oh my God. And like managing stress is a really, really valuable skill that I'm not always good at, but I feel like I've gotten way better at in the last year alone. It's yeah, there's like a million things I could cite related to this topic of what has led to growth and massive things that you have to learn from and grow from.
Are there specific ways that you go about kind of dealing with stress? Because I think there's, you know, it's easy to say, oh, I go on a hike, or I go snowboarding, or I go, you know, hang out by myself and listen to music. But when you're in the heat of things and you're really freaking out, it's hard to kind of think rationally and be like, okay, I have tools to get myself through this. So there's kind of like, you go through that a little bit, that freak out process, and then you kind of come back to the realization like, okay, I've done this before. Let's, you know, figure out how to handle it and kind of move on.
Yeah, I mean, there's not any one thing, but like as like a general thing that's really good to do. And again, like I don't always do this. Like I don't always handle stress well. But you know, sometimes, especially if like, cause I just am a really anxious person in general. I think if I'm having an anxiety attack about something, like the best thing you can do, and this is advice that I was given, and I must say it's like one of the most valuable things that I've ever learned, is like, okay, if you are freaking out, like just change one thing about your circumstance. If you're sitting, stand. If you're inside, go outside. If you're, I don't know, eating a sandwich, stop eating a sandwich. You don't, like, just change something about your circumstance, and then like take a deep breath, and that generally really helps to just like change one thing and then take a breath. And then for me, I think like writing down, okay, what's the problem here? Like, what do I need to do right now in the grand scheme of priorities? Like, what's the number one thing that has to be done in order for us to not die today?
I always tell people that writing down is a huge way that I've kind of dealt with stress in general, and just being able to get things done in a timely manner is because I have like, and as I'm sure you do too, a ton of stuff going on. So, you know, unless you're able to put things down in writing and be able to like see yourself ticking things off and understand that you're actually making progress, but also making progress on the things that need to get done first and kind of going down the line.
Totally.
It's definitely, really helped me, and I think it helps a lot of people as well.
I have like a million sticky notes on by the way on my desk that are like things I need to do. I have like 4 that I'm looking at with like 5 different check boxes on each. I think one of the most valuable things, because then it's not just like all these things in your head swirling around like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. It's like, nope, here's the list. Check them off.
Boom. Yeah, for me, I have just a wicked filled notes app on my iPhone. Like I have like 12 buckets and maybe just like pages and pages that you can scroll through on each bucket of just random thoughts that pop up. And then I'm constantly trying to like shift things together and like connect ideas and go back and forth. Do you have another way that you kind of keep track of things other than sticky notes?
Yeah, so my notes app also on my phone has lots of things, and then I have like 5 different notebooks, and sometimes they're organized, other times it's like one notebook, but I somehow am able to keep track of like, well, and it's like I'll go through to like, I feel like they sort of just like shift through the notebooks as I go along. Like I'll have one that's like I just write stuff down, and then it's like I move on to the next notebook, and like I might not ever go back to that old notebook, but I probably still have it. But I have gone back to old notebooks and like been like, what was that one thing that I was this one place at this time? And I was like, oh, well, that might be in this blue notebook that I had at that time. But yeah, so it's like I have one over here. I have like, how many notebooks do I have on me? I don't know. There's like at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notebooks, no, 7 notebooks within arm's reach right now. I would say 2 of them I'm currently using.
It's always funny to go back through a couple of those too and see like ideas that you've circled or kind of highlighted and we're like super pumped about. And then you can look back on them and be like, that actually just ended up going absolutely nowhere.
Yep. Yep, there's a lot of that.
What has it been like being a woman in the industry and growing up, you know, on the kind of the not male side? I think there's not a lot of women in the action sports scene that are pushing things forward in their own business and kind of like taking on as much as it seems like you have.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. We honestly like it's been a great experience so far. I mean, I've had like 1 or 2 things this year maybe that sort of like made me do a head tilt, but like that's about it. Because other than that, like we like honestly didn't really even think about it until the last 2 years. Like we didn't really, until someone pointed it out to us. They're like, you know, that's really unique that your company is run by women. You guys should probably talk about that more. And we were like, yeah, I guess so. You're probably right. That is strange. So yeah, I mean, and it made me think like, how do people react to me? Have people been surprised like when I've like gone to the factory? Like what, I don't know what they expect. But honestly, it's been, I think, nothing but a positive thing. And it's cool also to see like how many more women are stepping into these roles in the industry. Like I think too, it like comes down to like who you are as a person is the most important thing. Like, I think it provides a lot of unique opportunities too, because it's such a male-dominated industry that it's like I've been told many times, like, oh, it's so refreshing to like talk to someone who like, because you connect, I think, more easily on a deeper level because it's maybe a little like disarming. Because it's not like you have to be like, hey, bro.
It's
So I'm like a person that's just gonna be really happy and in your face probably, and you know, like using that to get to know people and ask them about themselves, and then like showing them that you care and sympathizing with them a little bit more and showing more emotion. So yeah, it's been a really good thing. And then too, like who isn't like stoked when you meet, like, especially if it is a rare thing to meet a girl in this space, like who isn't hyped to like be able to nerd out about snowboarding with a girl that you've just met? Like that's pretty cool. So yeah, it's been like nothing but a good thing for me. I've had really good experiences.
That's really cool. Do you see like have you guys done any kind of outreach programs or anything with the younger generation, and do you see more females getting into the sport as a whole?
Yeah, that's actually like the number one segment of the industry that is growing, at least as of like last year. That was like one of, if not other than like backcountry riding, I think actually girls was the only segment of snowboarding that was actually growing, because the overall numbers of snowboarders were declining, but juniors girls is the number one thing that's growing. And it's really, I think, because now like we're finally seeing the first generation of snowboarders with families who are like raising their families in snowboarding, and now for the first time there's a ton of like little girls that are starting snowboarding at a really early age, and they're like absolutely killing it, and it's so rad to see. And I think there's just gonna, like, I mean, the level of progression in women's are just like getting really awesome and really exciting. But I think in the next like 5 years, I think there's going to be such a huge jump in the level of women's riding that's going to be so cool to see, because it's like, even for me, like, so being one of like, when I first started like getting into park riding, like I was one of very few girls in the park, so it's like easy to be one of the best girl riders out there. But now it's like, holy shit, like these girls are throwing down, and I can't even compare to this, and it's awesome just to see. Like I do think like you're gonna see so many young girls that are just gonna like blow people's minds. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, I apologize in advance. We got some crazy dogs going at it in the background here.
What kind of dogs do you have?
Well, we help kind of like, we don't really foster, but we kind of watch a couple different dogs. So there's always different guys in and out, but it's nuts because their personality types are so insane that they're always just like, some of them will go at each other, some of them will really chill out. So it's like just kind of a crapshoot as far as when you come in the door, what's going to end up going on.
I love it. I love dogs.
Cool. Yeah, I think the next generation, I mean, in regards to not just the snowboard industry, but kind of, you know, the world as a whole is going to be really awesome to see grow up, because they're growing up with all of these technologies and all of these people that have really opened up and like, I think have provided information that generations before wouldn't have necessarily had access to, like this podcast, for example. And I think it's one reason why I enjoy having conversations with people like you, is to be able to hopefully inspire some other people into getting into what they want to do, and, you know, going forward and attacking their fears and kind of, you know, just doing the damn thing.
Totally. I mean, like, what good is life if you're not happy? Like, that's what, like, going back to the whole coloring book thing, like, that's why I started thinking about that in the first place, is just because it's like, I think a lot of people, very sadly, and it's like no fault of their own, it's hard and scary and weird to think about, but like doing something that genuinely makes you happy is scary, especially if you don't know that you're going to be rewarded for it monetarily. So like, but at the end of the day, like if you have a ton of money or if you have this or that, like if you're not happy, like what is the point? There is literally no point, which is again why I coloring books, as stupid as it was. I was like, well, I'm gonna do something that makes me happy, and more people truly should. You just got to get out and do it. It's like the same thing with traveling. Like, I think people have a major like mental roadblock because it's different and it's not like something everyone does all the time. But like, it's, you just have to go and do it, and you'll figure it out, and you'll be fine, and then you'll be so much better for it, and your soul will be so much richer, and you'll see the world differently.
I think the important thing to note too is that that kind of pursuit doesn't ever necessarily stop. I think a lot of people that haven't really gone after anything in their life on a higher level think of it as like this one thing to overcome, and that like once they get over that hump, it's everything's going to be okay. And that I don't think that that is ever the case. You get over that hump, and then there's a million other humps, and then you start to realize like life is this roller coaster of like these crazy highs and these crazy lows, and it doesn't ever stop. You're just kind of along for the ride.
I was talking to someone recently about that, like, because we've been making a lot of exciting changes internally here, and it's like my partner and I were just talking about it. We're like, once we get to this level, that like we'll just like the business will run and it'll be so exciting, and we can relax more. It's like that kind of challenges, and it'll, I'm sure, just always sort of be this way in some senses.
Yeah, I'm also very interested in kind of like the catalyst, or like the point in someone's life when they kind of wake up and start to realize like, oh shit, this is real. I haven't really been doing what I wanted to do, and now I'm gonna kind of go after that. Can you kind of pinpoint anything in particular in your life that's kind of helped push that along? Because I think what happens in most people is there's not one real defining moment. There's like a couple, and you kind of like start to get nudged toward this understanding that you can really do whatever you want to do, and that it just takes kind of this like, I guess, blind faith in jumping into what you want to do, and then just keeping going that way.
Totally. For me, that would definitely be like when I was sent to an inpatient treatment facility, because until then, I think, like, I mean, Southern California is awesome in so many ways, but if you grow up in certain parts of Southern California, it can really be stifling in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of like societal pressures, especially like being a young girl, like I didn't have a lot of girlfriends because I didn't really relate to a lot of them. And I think there's just like a lot of materialistic things that like you have to keep up with, like this and this. And so I had been really focused on one thing, because I was a really competitive soccer player, and that was like my life and my world. And then at a certain point, like I wasn't happy, and like I had a lot of like family problems and traumatic things that had happened, and then everything sort of imploded, and then like it's like you get sent to basically being institutionalized somewhere. And that for me was like the biggest turning point, because it's like everything that I had like known or worked on was now like gone, and you're forced to like focus on yourself and think about life differently and learn new ways of adapting to them. Then yeah, like you're saying, like having some blind faith and jumping into something, because then at that point it was like, oh shit, like I have nothing, like there's nothing going on, I don't know anyone, this is a weird environment, I have no friends. And then you get out into the normal world, and it is really weird to learn how to socialize normally with people again when you've been really removed and been in a strange environment like that. It's an incredibly strange experience, and I think it took me like a year or two to be normal, I think, after that. But I think just having everything stripped away and then thinking about what you want to do, and then yeah, like, because when I decided to start snowboarding, or decided to move to Sun Valley, or decided to get into graphic design, like those were all extremely blind decisions. And I think I've like learned this about myself, that I have a heavy pattern of like blindly jumping into something and just like, okay, I'm going to be forced to learn this because I can't get out of it. So like I learned how to drive a manual car because I flew to Portland, because I found a really rad car that was in Portland. And so I flew there and then had to drive it back to Salt Lake, because I was like, well, this is the best way to learn, because I'm going to have to get home somehow. And like, so I think you just have to, at some point, like take a leap of faith and like jump and try something. And then if it doesn't work, you just shift, you pivot.
Yeah. And I think there's, in going about things that way, you kind of always have this understanding that inevitably you end up hitting a low at some point in your life. And I think that's kind of the defining characteristic in a lot of successful people, is that they hit that low and they kind of carry that with them throughout whatever else they end up doing. It's like, okay, I understand that this can all, just crumble on a moment's notice. So it kind of lights that fire under your ass and gets you going in a way that I think the people that have never really fully experienced that don't necessarily have behind them.
Totally. If you've never experienced loss, then I think it's even scarier to have any like anticipation of that happening, because known, right? So you're like, oh my God, the world might end. But at a certain point, it's just like, well, nope, you gotta get it done, and you gotta figure it out. And you might not, and you'll carry on, you'll live to see another day. But it will probably be painful, but you'll make it through, and you'll have learned something at the end of it. Yeah.
It's in regards to the kind of everything going on with the Southern California situation, does that kind of help drive decision making as far as the content that you're putting out for Niche?
In what way do you mean?
Kind of like just being a little bit more aware of like what you're putting out, and making sure that there's, I don't know, necessarily maybe a more of a positive message to it, or that you're more careful of the kind of imagery that you show or things like that.
I don't know that we ever really think about that, to be honest with you, which is probably not a good thing. But I mean, mostly like whatever stuff we're putting out is extremely organic, and it's like just things that we like. And I think it's because like we've all, especially like there have been so many highs and so many extreme lows over the last 7 years of like, where like there's been many days where we're like crying in the office or like yelling, or like something's going on, and like it makes you a better person at the end of the day, especially because it's like, this is like our family, like truly. The people in here we're extremely close. And so the things that we're putting are very organic, and it's, I think, just become better people. And we've learned to trust ourselves more and know that, if things are coming from a genuine and good place, and they hold the core values that Niche represents, which is like, Niche is like our lives, and it's basically like us on a plate. It's not like this calculated, crafted thing, which is, again, like maybe not the best thing, but then maybe it is a good thing too. And so it's all very much just like our hearts and souls put out there. And like with graphics, like, when we first started, like they've come a long way since our first couple of years. Graphics before, I had no idea what I was doing. And I tried to like make stuff that would like fit in with the rest of the industry. And then I like took a leap on one board and was like, well, I think I'm just gonna make what if I make something that I like? And then it was really well received. And I think because it was different. And then the next year I did like a couple things. I was like, well, maybe if I do a few things that I really like, and then it was even better received. And then since then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do whatever the fuck I want to do, and just like make things that I like, and not think about what everyone else is doing. And then since then, it's just been incredible to see the reception from people, and even like so much feedback that we've gotten from people who are like, yeah, like you guys have really like grown up and pulled it together, and it's come so far. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's because I was 21 when we started. And I have grown up, and like everything that comes out visually from the brand is like, I can like look back and be like, oh, this was me at 21, 25. And it's really funny to see that like visual, basically it's like a visual like photo book of my life, which is really cool. But yeah, so I think we don't necessarily think a lot about like what to not, I mean, I guess we probably do think about what to not put out, but I guess it's like more so we just try and keep to the brand's values and keep things positive. Don't get wrapped up in negativity, and try to look on the bright side of things. I think especially in this day and age, because it's easy to like yell at people for not doing this or that, or getting pissed about politics or like all the crazy shit that's been happening lately in the US. And like you have to look at a few positive things, and like, you know, people can be really extremist about a lot of things, like, oh, but like, if you're not composting everything, then you're still not doing enough. It's like, no, you know what? Like, if everyone is doing one small thing a day, it makes a massive difference, because not everyone does one small thing a day. But if everyone did, like, one of my favorite quotes, small applied by millions of people can change the world, because it's true. If everyone did one little thing, it would make a big difference. So you don't have to be perfect. You just try and do things better. That got way off topic. So.
No, that was awesome. I was just letting you go because you had some nice tidbits in there. So that's a good segue into what I was going to ask next, which is I had seen a couple of the updates of the like all recycled or all I don't know what word I'm trying to use now. The board that you're kind of developing for next year. Is there anything that you can talk about in regards to that?
Yeah, that is something that we've been working on for the past 2 years, and we wanted to release it for 2016-17, but given like that the GST had closed and stuff, and we were dealing with the new factory, it was just we couldn't make it happen, unfortunately. But that is something we're extremely excited about, and that I think we hope to integrate across the entire line as soon as possible. The thing is working on this 100% fully recyclable snowboard, and I think it works in a couple different ways. So what it is that we're using this new resin system called recyclamine that was developed by Entropy and Kenora, and Entropy is the company that's developed the bioresins that we've been using until now. They're really, really awesome guys out of California, actually. And so what you're able to do is so let's say you take a snowboard, let's say I broke it or something. So I can now take that snowboard, I put it in this solution, and it dissolves all the resins, and you can harvest all the actual virgin raw materials themselves and totally recycle them all. So you could recycle all the you can recycle all the plastics, for example, and like turn them into a thermoplastic, and then like make a high back for a binding or a surfboard fin or any number of other products with that, which is really awesome, because it's like you have a full cradle to cradle solution for these individual materials, which is amazing. And then also, because a huge part of manufacturing waste is, well, a huge part of the problem is your manufacturing waste, because when you press the snowboard, it comes out in a rectangle, not in the shape of a snowboard. So you got to cut off all the outside tidbits, and that doesn't really go anywhere or do anything. So instead, you can take all that waste now and recycle that too, and turn that into other products, which is really amazing. So it's like a zero waste, fully closed loop solution, which is really exciting.
So why do you think that other manufacturers haven't really pushed that side of things as much as they have recently? Because there's been a couple companies that have kind of dabbled in it, but I think you're definitely on the forefront of like really pushing that forward. And like, what was it like to get more involved in the processes and kind of the science behind how that all works? Because there's definitely a lot involved with understanding how different materials are working together and how to go about that whole process.
Yeah, luckily I think there's a lot of brilliant engineers around us, and we can ask them their expertise, because I am not an engineer at all. I really like getting involved in it, but I mean, that's like the best thing you can do with anything that you're not educated on, is just ask people around you, because they'll tell you, and it's great. But yeah, so sorry, I'm like drawing a blank now on your question. I was just gonna let you think it over for a little bit and see if you got it. Yeah, like, so how was it trying to get more involved in that process, and why do you think some other manufacturers haven't necessarily taken that step? Yeah, so I think, I mean, a large part of why a lot of people don't get into it is because it's not cheaper, and it does take more time. So especially if you're doing really, really large scale stuff, like, you know, it's like compounding interest sort of a thing, like 30,000 snowboards, and it's taking you 10 minutes longer for each one, that adds up and productivity goes down and blah, blah, blah. But so I think time and money for a lot of people is an issue, I assume. Or I don't know, because to me it's like a no-brainer, because the products are stronger, they're lighter weight, and they feel more like damp and snappy underfoot. So like, why wouldn't you do that? I don't know. I'm going to assume more people do start doing that, and they have started doing things, which is really awesome. Yeah, it is really funny, but and I think the recycling thing is new and untested in the industry, so it's always a little scary for people to like time and energy into developing that. But yeah,
I think that's really cool, and I think it's awesome that you guys are like, does it feel necessarily like you're at the forefront of the industry sometimes? Because I know it can be weird when you're really just sticking your head down and really delving into your own business. You end up kind of like closing yourself off to what's going around you, which can be a good and a bad thing. But I think it feels really goofy, like being really entrenched in what you're doing and then kind of coming up for air every once in a while and being like, oh, okay, that's what everyone else is doing.
yeah, totally. It's easy to forget to like stop and look around you. But yeah, no, I do think that this is at 100%. This is like one of the first times I feel really confident saying that, because I just, I don't know, people are like, why aren't you making loftier claims about like that you guys are the most eco-friendly brand? I'm like, well, because I haven't done like a full scientific analysis of every little piece of like every tiny thing. I could postulate that that's true, but it's like hard because there's no one simple system to evaluate things on. And they're like, honestly, stop it. Just say it, okay? Like, I don't know. But this is something that I'm like, yeah, this is totally revolutionary, and this is at the forefront of sustainable manufacturing, and I think it has the potential to completely revolutionize the manufacturing industry. Like, he is one of the most exciting things that's happened in a very, very long time.
Definitely. And can you talk any further about like some plans that you have, whether that be with the All Sustainable board or other things, other initiatives that you guys kind of have in the pipeline for the future?
Yeah, there's some things I can't talk about yet, but we will be talking about very soon that are really, really exciting. Very soon. I'm really excited about that. But yeah, I mean, this is like the most exciting thing. And I think the key will be developing the proper rollout process, and then developing the proper ecosystem for this whole thing to exist within. So like how we process, how we like, how do we retrieve the waste, how do we process it? And we're working on all that right now with the guys who developed the resins, and they'll be managing that more than we will, but just getting that set up properly so that it works on every channel, because it's like great if this thing exists, but now we have to like have the systems in place to support all that.
Definitely.
So yeah, and, like I said, in 17, 18, which would mean those products get like shown off and announced in like December and January. So over the next few months, we'll just be developing the logistics for all that stuff.
Sweet. What is it like,
Yeah.
kind of getting more people involved, more people on board, and to support the cause? Because I think at a certain point, you guys are already doing it clearly with a good amount of riders, is sponsorship related stuff, and being able to create more relationships with other people that are really into what you're doing. But that also gets more difficult because as you bring on more people, you really need to make sure that, you're taking care of kind of the family that's been around you for a little bit longer.
Yeah, and that can be really hard because I've made mistakes on both ends of the spectrum where I've like brought in a bunch of people and then they don't get hurt, and it's the worst. And then, I've had times where there's like, I've like pushed up everyone away, and I'm like, no, to get hurt, so let's not get more people involved. And I think coming up with a good balance and making sure that you have like your family of people that you can count on and they can count on you, and you have a good support system within that structure, and that you're all functioning well together. Because yeah, you're right, it is hard when you do bring on too many people, and yeah, like I said, like that's one of the most painful things is if people get hurt or neglected. At least for me, I don't handle that well. I don't like doing that. Yeah, so it's really interesting, and you just have to, like with anything else, I guess, you have to find the right balance.
What is it like in relation to day-to-day operations trying to find balance? Like, I mean, as a designer, you already have so much going on in and out of a day and different projects that come up and things like that. So I'm assuming that just kind of gets kicked into like second or third or fourth gear, being a business owner and then doing design work on top of it.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, I've not been doing the best at it because I have been getting caught up in like business things. But I think for me, I have to just like have my days where I can focus, and I like tell people, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to be doing this today. What are your priorities? Do you need me? Okay, great. Let me know if something comes up. Otherwise, like I need to focus on this. Otherwise, it's like I'll have days where I like just knock off things off the checklist. And then I have to have other days where it's like, nope, I'm just gonna draw all day today. And then sometimes I feel guilty because I'm like, there's so many things that need to be done, but I'm just sitting here drawing trees or something. But I'm like, well, no, but that's my job, so it's fine. And it's not a bad thing that I feel really happy doing this, but then sometimes I feel guilty about it, and I'm like, but I think just like for me, it's separating the days to focus, which again, sometimes I don't do that, and then I just like slowly chip away at something creative. I'll like go in and tweak a font or something that day, or just chip away at it. But I do personally like having the separation of my days, so I can like really get in the headspace that I need to be in.
Yeah. So how does that kind of lend to an overall day in the headquarters that you have there? Is it just kind of all over the place, mass chaos all the time, people trying to put things together and connect, or can there be downtime, and like, what does it look like on the other side of what people are seeing online from you guys?
Most people probably don't see anything of any of this, and other than a lack of social media presence, which is really terrible, but we need to get way better at that. But yeah, like, I mean, I think most people don't see any of that kind of stuff. And then on the back end in the office, it's like usually not chaotic, but there's like days where we're all running around and chatting with each other all day. And then there's days where we don't really talk to each other. And we were all like, oh, that was really nice that we could all just focus on our own tasks. So I think just as long as we all communicate on the daily, so we're not sitting around waiting for each other, then it's fine.
Nice. How was it? What was it like trying to bring together the people that are a part of your team now? Like, clearly, at some points you have to bring in people from outside, or kind of partner with people that are doing remote work and things like that. Like, what does that workflow end up being like for you?
Well, we're so streamlined now that it's like the people who are here are here. And I mean, like we have one person who works sort of remotely, but he's sort of taking a step back at the moment. But yeah, and I think so. One of the biggest lessons we've learned is that for us, being a small team, like it doesn't really work unless it's a particularly special person that we like know and trust and have worked with. Like finding people to work remotely is difficult. And just finding the right people is the key to life. Because we've like had periods of time where we like hired a sales manager or did this and that, and it like didn't work out. And like it just has to be the right people. And it's been the people who are involved, it's been really serendipitous how they've gotten involved too. And yeah, just like bringing them in and keeping them close, and then have our tasks that we do. And it's really hard to build the right team because we've made mistakes with that in the past, and we've learned a lot from it. And I think we've also learned that it's better to have no one than to have the wrong person, because it does way more damage otherwise.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think there's what I've tried to do in just doing more freelance work in the design world is really making sure that the people that I end up taking on as clients, I would actually consider, hanging out with or being friends with in real life, and like very, very much focusing on not doing business with people that I feel like I would need to have a contract with in order to keep a relationship going. Because I feel like the second that you have to really vet somebody in that way is when it's already, I think, going down like a direction that you don't necessarily want it to go down. Do you have like anything that you look for in either employees or people that you work with, or kind of like relationships as it relates to business, that kind of help you find people that are similar minded?
Sorry, you cut out for the first part of that question.
The god dang internet.
Right.
Is yes, I'm not sure how I'm going to reword that.
I heard the last part.
How do you go about, I don't want to use the word vetting, but how do you go about understanding what types of people that you enjoy doing business with, and like, is there anything that you kind of make sure to stay away from? Because I think when I've done design work in the past for a lot of freelance stuff that I've done, I've really made a conscious effort to do business with people that I would be friends with or be at least comfortable hanging out with, because I think the second that you end up getting in a relationship where you really have to define terms right off the bat is not necessarily always the right way to go, because there's like this overarching weirdness between how you're working together.
Yes, totally. Although at the same time, defining everyone's expectations from the starting gate, I think, is also really valuable, so that it's not like, oh, but I thought you were gonna do this, and then shit gets weird, and then it just gets weird. But yeah, it's hard. I don't know. I'm still figuring that part out, I think. Yeah, a lot. And I think I've been taking things slower with people, because I have a habit of like, I'll get excited about someone, and then, because I'm just like a very loyal, passionate person, and if I like someone, I'm like, yes, come in and I want you to be close, and I'll like bring them very close. But then at the same time, if something happens, then like I'm the person who gets just like eaten alive by it. So taking things slowly is step one, certainly. I think as far as the vetting process goes, like, yeah, you're right. Like, finding people that you would want to be friends with is really important. And that's like my favorite relationships, and I guess ones that have lasted, have been people like-minded that I enjoy being around, that I can talk to and be honest with, because like one of the most important things in life is, and relationships with people, is being able to communicate with them and having it not be weird, and just being able to be open and tell people what you're thinking and how you're feeling. And, you know, it's sort of like having, maybe I should do this in business, but like vetting them like a roommate, and being like, hey, if problems arise, let's not freak out. Let's all just talk to each other. And as long as we're clear that like it'll all be okay, and that we just approach everything by communicating and talking about it instead of freaking out at the other person, then we'll be fine. So yeah, that's something I think my partner Kirsten and I struggle with, is like, how do we vet people properly, because we've made mistakes with that in the past, and it's difficult. But I do think you're right. It needs to be people that you enjoy being around, and that you can respect, and that have respect for you.
Definitely. And I think there's always going to be, both in business and in life, just that aspect of getting into relationships with people and then finding out that they aren't necessarily who you thought they were, or, you know, there's issues that come up between the two of you. But I think that's like, you can't necessarily always expect that things are going to go perfect just because you're approaching it in a good way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, things are going to happen, and you're going to have to deal with it.
Have you had any cool encounters on the slopes, like whether you have seen someone riding one of your boards, or, you know, developed a friendship that ends up turning into something a little bit more business related or a longer term thing?
Yeah, that's actually my number one most favorite thing in the world is, well, that's not my favorite thing in the entire universe, but it's one of my favorite things, is like, if I, and it's like, now it happens more often since like we've grown, but like I remember even the first few times that I like saw someone riding a niche board that I didn't know them and I don't know how they got the board. I'd be like, oh my God, that person bought our snowboard because they wanted to buy it. That's amazing. And it's like really exciting to see that. It does not get old. I still get really excited every time I see a niche board somewhere. And I really love to, like, if I get on the lift with someone or if I'm in a lift line or like strapping in at the top and I see someone with a niche board, I really love like talking to them, like, oh hey, how do you like that board? And it's always really funny. And like for a while, my husband, like if my husband there, he'd be like, oh yeah, she designed that. Like, Todd, you're ruining the authentic response here. I want to see what people think, but it's always really funny. It's like funny too then if people like start telling you about it, like especially if they like think that they know all the facts about everything. I'm like, oh yeah, really cool. But I love it. It's like really exciting and really rewarding too, just to hear so like a stranger's feedback and response on things. It's really, really cool. And then in terms of like meeting someone on the hill and having a long-term relationship or something. So there's this girl that rides for us. Her name is Midori, and I was one of the judges, and she was riding that day. She's from Japan, and she's awesome. And she threw this trick that was like my favorite one of the day. It was like I think she did like a back three no grab method with like she threw her hands in the air and went like wee as she spun, and I was like, oh my God, who are you? This is great. Because it was just like silly and fun, and I like met her afterwards and was like, and she was riding for Forum at the time, and I was like, hey, well, if you ever aren't riding for Forum, let me know. And so she started riding for us like pretty soon after that. And like over the years, like we had like would only talk like once or twice a year because she moved back. She was living in Utah at the time, but then she moved back to Japan. And since then, like we just started talking like more and more. And then like this year now, like when we went to Japan, we went and like stayed with her and traveled around with her, which is awesome. And we've just grown to be like good friends, I feel like. And it's been really cool and exciting how that's developed. Really cool. She's awesome. And then she came out in May and she visited us here and stayed with us, and that was cool. And it's just like, it's cool to build a global network of friends and people. And you do meet people all over the slopes. And I guess there have been other people like through Niche that I've like built really deep friendships with, like our Canadian counterpart Jordan. He's become like one of my best friends in the entire world, like, you know, regardless of whatever happens with Niche, like he's like my family and so important to me. There's a lot of people like that. Our little guy Gavin here, I shouldn't say little guy, he's a man. But I just love him. He's the best. And he's also become like a member of my family and our family. And yeah, which is cool. It's just cool to build deep relationships with people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's one aspect of business that gets overlooked a lot is meeting people that are like-minded and sticking with them in the longer term, regardless of what kind of happens with like what you're involved with at the time. Is how can other people support Niche if they want to, you know, get more involved with your brand? You mentioned not really having too much of a social media presence. Like, other than obviously buying a board and being awesome and supporting you with money, what else can people do?
Oh man, other than buying snowboards, oh, how can you support Niche? I mean, and our social media isn't like dead by any means. We could just be better at it. I mean, even just talking about it. So you can visit our website, of course, which is nichesnowboards.com. But getting involved in any way, like, yeah, obviously, like we can only survive if we actually sell snowboards. But that being said, I mean, I think we have deeper goals to just make better choices for the planet and the industry. So even just like making better choices on a daily basis, talking about where your snowboard is made and how it's made, and you know, if you're interested in the brand, you maybe don't want to buy a board, like tell people around you that this thing exists, it's here, that maybe it's not your thing, but you know, maybe your friend could be super into it. I don't know. That's sort of a strange question to answer.
Where else can people follow you online? Obviously you're on Instagram, Facebook, right?
Yes, like me personally or the brand?
Both.
So me personally, I've got lots of different things. So the brand, so Niche, yes, we have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. We have a Twitter that exists, but we sadly never use it, which is terrible and shameful. And there's also, we have a Pinterest account that's pretty cool that I also need to get back on. Yeah, those would be the main ways to interact with the brand, would be like through our website, through Facebook, and through Instagram are the number 3 things, top 3 things that you could do for sure. And then, you know, a lot of times, like if you're in Salt Lake or in Utah, whether you live here or you're just stopping through, like it's awesome. Like we're really friendly. And we love meeting people, and so we're up at Brighton a lot, throwing demos and doing other things. Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anybody else that you want to give a shout out to before we kind of wrap things up?
Oh man, so many people, I guess. But yeah, like my partner Kirsten, I would probably be dead in a ditch without her. Same thing with my husband Todd. Gavin, who I mentioned also earlier, we would also not be able to do this without him, certainly. Same thing with Jordan up in Canada. And just everyone who's ever supported us or helped us or has been encouraging in times when we didn't think we were going to make it through, or who maybe just came by and gave us a hug when we really needed it. I mean, it's just, we're really lucky to have a good community of people around that are really supportive and lovely and wonderful, and we appreciate all of them.
Awesome. And then when is your next kind of year's line coming out? Because I know you guys are going through like a end of season sale right now. When will the new boards for the next season come out?
So those will become available in September-ish. Yeah. Because our boards should ship at the end of August, which means that for consumers, towards the middle or end of September, they should. And you can check them out on our website or through any of our dealers who are awesome. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, I look forward to kind of keeping in touch with you in the future and hopefully getting some more knowledge about the all the stuff you guys have going on over there.
Yeah, we should have some really exciting announcements in August-ish.
Awesome. Well, sweet.
Yes.
Have a great rest of your day, and if I can help out in the meantime with anything, let me know. We'll definitely have to schedule another one of these.
Yeah, and it would be great to meet in person since you're here in Utah. It's awesome to talk to you. I want to learn more about you. It's very weird to talk about yourself for like 2 hours.
Yeah. And it's goofy too, I think, with like just the podcast format in general. People kind of like reach an upper tier of what they can end up listening to, which is about like right now an hour and a half ish. And then as you kind of like get further into that, people are like, I've listened to a lot now, I'm gonna go do something else. So it's cool to have people come back on the show and be like, yeah, this is what happened since then, this is what we're doing, this is what's going on now. So
nice. I love it. Well, it's been really great to talk to you. Yeah,
right back at you. Kick the rest of the day in the ass.
Yeah, I'll do my best. You do the same.
I will.
Cool. Well, I guess, have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
You as well. Take it easy.
Okay. Bye.
Peace.